I'm just going to get started now. Thank you for coming up here to the Denning Room, the 101 track, which is for people who are kind of explaining things in a more simplistic approach to make it more accessible, as I explained earlier. And something I like to do, I work in security, is I really enjoy doing social engineering. So what I've done for all the speakers this afternoon is I've done a little bit of hunting online, and I found out an interesting fact about every single person on this as well. I also set someone else to do this for me, so I don't know what facts they found out on me, so I'm just going to start reading them. They've told me we've got 3. So my first interesting fact is I have an irrational fear of Greg's vegan sausage rolls after an unfortunate slip caused by ignoring a wet floor sign. I am also the chairman of the Michael Bolton fan club. There you go. And I would try to legally change my surname to DS because my first name is Lee, and I'm that proud of being from Leeds. So first up, we have got Rory Wagner, and his fun fact is he's distantly related to Wagner from X Factor 2010. Who knew? So there you go. I'll pass it over to you now, Rory. Enjoy.
I mean, news to me as well. Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on, guys. Look, I just want to preface that the schedule info, which is on the nice booklets that you have, is wildly inaccurate to what we're actually talking about here. So I appreciate this is a very full room, but hopefully I can still impress you with some stuff. So also, it's my first conference presentation. I've done a bit of university lecturing before, but this is the first time I've done it in such a conference kind of style way. What I'm really wanting you guys to do is, look, we're going to talk about some key concepts and topics, and take some notes or write them down on your phone and just take them away and kind of dig into them. This is the Info 101 rookie track, so the idea is that we try to keep it reasonably high level and we don't go too deep into the weeds so that you can kind of go and build on those high level topics and go a bit deeper in your own time. Also, just want to shout out, Chris Laird is going to be doing a really good talk on ransomware today as well, so that's part of the 101 track, so I suggest getting along to that as well. So, introductions. G'day. My name is Rory Wagner. I'm a senior investigator at CyberCX, part of the Digital Forensics and Incident Response team. Typically, peruser of forensic artifacts and putting out fires. Background in consultancies and law enforcement. Law enforcement's where I cut my teeth, New Zealand Police. Little bit of, I have got a degree. It's not necessarily needed, but there you go. And certifications. SANS and IASIS, if you're familiar. I'm from Wellington, New Zealand. I'm also half English. So there's like a bit of a question mark there because I've only just got back into the UK in January. So I'm reasonably fresh off the boat, so you have to be nice to me. Also, it's my 30th today, so that's something. So that kind of plays into you, like, well, what's Grogu and Yoda doing on the screen? Well, that's how I felt yesterday, and this is how I feel today. That's not just down to the alcohol, that is the age. Sweet, so let's have a look at a little bit at the agenda. So what we're going to be talking about today is the panic kind of stage when an incident kicks off, and how we as incident responders kind of deal with clients, take them, hold their hands through a protocol to get them to the other side. A little bit at the end, we'll talk about some observations that I've just seen from cases that I deal with, and also just some key takeaways. So let's look at the whole ecosystem to start with. So DFIR sits in the middle, but it's actually got a lot of other practices or different functions that sit around it. So obviously, incident response is that kind of phase of how do we go from identifying an incident all the way through the end-to-end process of investigating, containing, eradicating, etc. And we'll look at the IR lifecycle later on. But there's also obviously digital forensics, which is more of the technical kind of science of looking at computer artifacts and understanding what's happened on a system. But there are all these other things that kind of revolve around it. So you've got consulting, which, that could be preparation before the attack, or, sorry, just reading my slides here, essentially dealing with stakeholders, etc. So, we are DFIR consultants. We consult and we help our clients with dealing with these pretty shitty situations, to be honest. Privacy. there's always a privacy impact. That's the whole point of information security, right? We're protecting data. We want to uphold that CIA triad. And so if no one knows, confidentiality, integrity, availability. Crisis communications. How are we talking externally? How are we talking internally? Making sure that we're able to narrate what's happened and be able to either give us time or make sure that our clients are able to talk to their external stakeholders in the correct manner. And then cyber intelligence. So every incident there are indicators of compromise. There's information, TTPs that we want to suck up and be able to take that in and pass it on to future clients so that we can track things and be able to mitigate things before they happen. So that's the whole ecosystem. Essentially, they can all stand alone in isolation, but where it's really cool is when they all come together on a big incident. And essentially, they all come together very quickly, quicker than you can say, I've been heckin' hecked, which is how I say it in Kiwi. So, panic. Let's start off with what happens. And let's go into a major cause of panic. So, ransomware. You're reasonably probably familiar with this. We've seen a lot of it across the news. But what I like to think of ransomware is the 3 E's. So, you've got encryption of data. Not very good. And typically the first thing that you see, apart from the, probably the screensaver on the side there, Lockbit, pretty prevalent at the moment. Exfiltration. So that means taking the data out of the environment, so our client's data, and taking it off to threat actor infrastructure. And then extortion. And that's probably what people are most familiar with, is like, give us Bitcoin, we give data. And that's usually what it comes down to. But with the exfiltration is, okay, well, you can decrypt your files, but they've still got your data. If there's no real honor among thieves, who knows what's going to happen with that. And honestly, if that doesn't get you panicking, come talk to me afterwards. You should get in DFIR. You need to stay chill. But as you can imagine, clients are kind of like, shoot, we're in a bit of a sticky situation here. So, which leads me into, essentially, incidents don't have to just be ransomware. They can range from, malware, business email compromise, all the way to ransomware, which is usually the worst kind of thing that can happen. Although in business email compromise, you might be losing millions of dollars because whoever in the payments department has just sent $1 million invoice or has received $1 million invoice and just gone paid it because they were like, oh, cool. And that's now actually gone to the threat actor. But let's think about some of the impacts that you have, or the concerns that come up and kind of increase the level of panic. Excuse me, just 1 second. Just going to take some water. So obviously, there's a business continuity impact, right? If we've got a ransomware case, well, how do we continue? All of our files are encrypted. We're pretty much up a creek without a paddle right now. And that's probably CEO's number one concern. There's client service impact. So the clients are understanding, so our clients, sorry, it's inception here, are kind of like, what's going on? We can't, we've paid for this service or whatever. Why isn't it working? The information security part of it is, the data. We've lost confidentiality, integrity, or availability. In ransomware, well, we've possibly lost all 3 of those. So it's not great. A loss of reputation for the business, and this is massive, right? Because loss of reputation means dollars going to another competitor, etc. Or should I say pounds? My apologies. Loss of client trust. Same with reputation, right? Is clients are going to go elsewhere if they can't trust, the provider they've paid money to. I'd do the same thing. I'd be like, no, my dollars and pounds are going somewhere else. And then the legal and the privacy issues, right? So there's obviously regulatory bodies, there's compliance, the privacy of said clients, and just making sure that those things are pretty, they're impactful and they can affect people in a lot of different ways. If it's their addresses or their email addresses, bank account numbers, it can really start to pile on and really that's more the kind of human side of it. We look at a lot of like the business side, well, our dollars are losing, but there's actually that human impact. And there have been a number of high profile cases, Medibank, for example, in Australia, they pretty much lost like their whole user database, which just contained phone numbers, addresses. et cetera, which just, obviously people aren't happy with that. They put a lot of trust into their, into the businesses that service them, and that's not ideal. So, an old boss of mine used to say, well, everyone wants an answer for a start, but he said, this isn't incident response, Rory. This is instant response. People want answers like this, like super quickly, and it's crazy. If you ever, anyone in DFIR, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you're not, you'll understand it if you're ever involved in an incident, because you want answers just straight away. So who are the people that want answers? Well, CEO, so we're talking about that business continuity before. They want to make sure, well, can we keep making those dollars? The lawyers, so they're looking at that regulatory side, and they're like, shoot, okay, how much of a risk profile are we at this moment? The insurers, so if you have an insurance policy, a cyber insurance policy to be specific, they've obviously taken on the risk with you, and they want to make sure, okay, well, how much are we going to have to pay Rory to come and fix the situation, or everyone else that needs to do that? And then, of course, there's clients. That's reasonably self-explanatory. They're like, why isn't the service I paid for working, or product, or whatever it is? And then there's the staff. We can't forget that there are actually people within the organization that may not be at that executive level, but there's also, am I going to be able to keep my job? Is this a going concern? Is the business going to keep running? Which CEO is worrying about, so don't worry too much, staff. He'll sort something out. But, there's just a number of people. And look, the other thing I wanted to say is your parents. So I just worked over Christmas, and my mum and dad were like, why aren't you at the dinner table having glasses of wine? And I was like, I can't be drinking, Mum, Dad. I've got to do this incident. And that was with a healthcare provider. So something that Holly, I hope I'm not butchering it. Was it Foxcroft this morning? Can someone? Yeah. She was just saying around, the spiciness of people that are just persistently wanting to investigate things from an end-to-end conclusion. I thought that was really interesting, because that is what we do. You're very passionate in DFIR. I'm sure Chris can attest to that as well. It's a real passion project, and you sacrifice a lot. I mean, I'm here presenting to you on my birthday. I think last year I was working in Auckland, New Zealand on my birthday. It's, screw birthdays. Let's get into the spicy artifacts and see what's going on. But one of my boss currently, and he said this recently, was we need to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And we need to take clients on that journey. So everyone wants these answers, etc., but we can't, forensics takes a bit of time, It's not this thing that in CSI where we click a button and enhance, and it's done. So you've really, when we're dealing with clients, we need to make sure that secondly, setting expectations, but just being understanding of, the situation that they're going through, telling them it's going to be okay. Just chill for the moment, be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and we'll try and get these answers together. So, as you can imagine, there's a lot of chaos. So let's get into the protocol. So let's go over some high-level topics, essentially, to start with. So if anyone's familiar with SANS, they do security training, etc. They're bloody expensive, but it is really good. So this is the SANS incident response life cycle. So essentially we're in this very steady state at the start of we're preparing, we're doing tabletops, we're doing incident response plans or playbooks, etc. to make sure that everyone's across what happens when an incident happens. And we're also identifying. And there's incidents, but there's also events. There's constantly someone's, tried to log in multiple times, but it's not, someone trying to brute force it. It's just someone's forgotten their password and they're, just finger bashing, trying to get in. So, but once we do declare an incident, well, we need to quickly go through a number of steps. And this is where the investigation kind of side comes into, where I kind of step in. We get a call at the identification stage and say, okay, shit's on fire. Please come help. But containment's really important, because what we're trying to do there is stop the bleeding. So that's either, pulling out network cables, which some people would say don't do, please, maybe, or just isolating the host if you've got like an EDR solution, etc. Eradication, we're wanting to, make sure that whatever methods that a threat actor is hooked into the system are removed so that they can't get back into it. And then we're going into recovery. But you'll see that recovery talks about, well, containment's failed, we have to start again. And that's really key, because if there is a case where we've missed a computer that has some sort of persistence mechanism on it, we can't just carry on with our recovery. We need to go back and make sure that we're going through those phases again. Otherwise, you're just getting a persistent threat within the environment. At the end of it, obviously, we get to do lessons learned. There's reporting and the incident's complete. But identification can be, tricky sometimes, unless it's blaringly in your face, files are encrypted, you've got the lockbit screensaver. It's a difficult thing to do. And recovery is another one we need to touch on. It's a low and slow burn. This is very much coming back into that. We're setting expectations with our clients that this isn't going to be sorted overnight. This could be, weeks and months. In the case which I was working on over Christmas, that's still ongoing. We're still building back up that environment from ground zero. So let's look at some digital forensic concepts as well. And I apologize to anyone that's already familiar with these, but I think they're really good to know. So Dr. Edmond Locard, French bloke, late 1800s, early 1900s, grandfather of forensics in the physical sense, right? No computers back then. This bloke was just chain smoking cigarettes and had a sick moustache. So every contact leaves a trace is essentially what he said. And I think that's something that we can all kind of resonate with if you've seen CSI or, any kind of crime scene investigation. There's either blood splatter or there's a murder weapon, there's someone's toenail clippings or whatever it is. So yeah, every contact leaves a trace. And then there was a bloke called Jesse Kornblum, and he just evolved it. He's pretty much said the same thing, to be honest. But it's the first law of computer evidence. And what he's saying is there's evidence of every action that occurs on a computer. 99% of the time. There's obviously times where anti-forensics employed, so they tried to sweep things under the carpet. But most of the time, computers are very good at just collecting information. We've just seen most recently with Microsoft's recall, which was obviously controversial. Yeah, hear a few grumbles and groans in the crowd. But, this is the thing, is computers are consistently and, they're always collecting information. So with those, the IR lifecycle and the digital forensics concepts, let's move into, how do we tackle panic? And this is me on a Friday or a Saturday being not another one. And that was my best, old lady impression. But yeah, they typically do come in on a Friday or a Saturday. And this again comes into this passion project, right? You've got to be passionate about DFIR. It hits you at the worst times. Most of the time it's during the day because the client's not awake at 2 a.m. unless they have a SOC or whatever. And then I'm up trying to wipe the sleep from my eyes. But let's have a look into just a very basic kind of understanding of the process. So essentially when we get that call, and not another one, we want to understand that background and what has happened. Well, what's the lead up from point A of just normal services and, normal timeline to where it's got bad? Okay, obviously, ransomware, files encrypted, say no more. But that's really key because it starts for us to understand the timeline of events and how things have happened. And it will start for us to start forming investigative questions. Anyway. Understand the client priorities is also very key. So if, let's take a mining industry, for example, their main concern, or the CEOs or whoever it is can we keep mining minerals, etc. But if we look on the other hand at maybe a hospital, which is what I was dealing with over Christmas, was, can we keep patients alive? Can we keep surgeries going? Triage, just healthcare really. Are the machines that are connected to our network going to keep working? And that's obviously a completely different side of, and there's this human and business factor there, right? The business, boo-hoo, you can't mine minerals for a couple of months or something, which obviously that's not great because there are other flow-on effects, but someone's life is, whatever your morals are, you battle that in your own mind. And then understanding their environment. So as DFIR consultants, we're looked at as this kind of magical genie that we know everything about technology, where really we have a very good understanding at a base level of most things, and there will be like niches that we're good at. But it's very difficult to understand a client's environment, and you also just need to go through this conversation with them to understand, well, what are you using on the perimeter? Is it hybrid? Is it on-prem? Is it in the cloud? Whatever the case may be. And so we need to start building that understanding of what's going on, because that then helps us understand, well, what are the paths that an attacker could get into, right? Deploying forensic agents and EDR, massive. EDR is endpoint detection and response software, just for anyone not in the know. So forensics agents, and we'll be talking about the tools in a minute, are really important, but EDR is maybe more important at the initial stages, because we want to kind of get it to be able to detect what's happening in the environment and stop those badness, is what I'll say. But we want that spread as far and wide as we can. So EDR, get that out there. That can kind of start giving us that kind of level of understanding of like what things are popping off, what alerts are we getting. And then we also want to do the forensic agent side, because that's where we start threat hunting. And this is where I really enjoy it, because I start pulling on threads. I get to dive deep into people's computers and be quite curious and kind of understand what's happened. So, talk about quickly enterprise forensics. So the challenge is, in an incident like ransomware, is it logically possible to image all the machines? No, it probably isn't. And we're going to talk about the old school and new school forensics. How do you perform forensics on a large scale? Well, this is where forensic tooling comes in and being able to spread it out far and wide. If you have an active threat in an environment, is it time efficient to spend days of analysis on a host? Well, probably not, because if that host is a dead end, then, we've just wasted clients' time and money looking at something that's not going to benefit us. So what we need to do is collect just what we need to assess the situation, threat hunting, analyze the key forensic artifacts, the evidence of threats, and then provide the actions back to the customer, whether that's us doing it or them doing it, because most places have their own IT teams as well, and we're working in tandem with them to push this threat actor out and start to tools of the trade. Velociraptor cape, let me go 5 minutes over. Hayabusa. So we'll touch on Velociraptor first. Has anyone heard of Velociraptor? Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. Such a cool tool. If you haven't, I want you guys to go and check it out. It seems a bit weird at first, especially if you can't be able to apply it to something, but it's awesome. It's developed by this guy called Mike Cohen. He works for Rapid7. I think Rapid7 actually pretty much bought Velociraptor, and Mike came over as well. Super smart guy. But essentially, we have questions as investigators, and this is what we're talking about with those forensic agents. We want to get it out far and wide, and we want to be able to query these machines to be like, well, what have you done? What's happened to you? And these are where these questions come out. What user ran malware.exe? What host does malware.exe? And once you get one kind of thread, you can start pulling on other threads. So you can kind of see the technical kind of thing is we've essentially got a command and control. But it's a good one, so don't worry. So the assets are obviously the hosts, and we just put Velociraptor where we can, as far and wide, and then me as an admin, I go, I want this artifact, and it goes, sweet, I'm going to send that out to the suite of hosts, and they go, cool, this is it, take it away, and that comes back to me, and that's where I can start to answer those questions that, CEO man's got. So, and this again is, not Mary Poppins, what's her name? Sound of Music. Look at all those artifacts. So these are all just examples of what we can start pulling. And I know some of these will be maybe a little bit foreign to you if you haven't worked in security or DFIR specifically, but the top level titles should give you a bit of an idea. So, evidence of execution is massive. File existence, so we're looking at the file system, the MFT, account usage. We're going to talk about event logs. Probably my favorite artifact is event logs. But yeah, take a picture if you need to, or come talk to me afterwards. These are just some of the cool things that you can get with Velociraptor. Okay, but sweet. So now that we've found this thread and we know that server A is absolutely hosed, it's got malware up the wazoo, there's files gone, whatever, how do we take a look at it? And so the old school way of looking at things was, oh, we're going to have to turn the server off, we're going to have to image it, we're going to process it, and then we're going to analyze it. And that's taken like a week because the server's, I don't know, 250 terabyte or whatever the size of it. What we can do now is called a triage image. So essentially all we're getting is the forensic artifacts, these ones, that we need, and putting them into a little bundle, and we're able to rip that out really quickly. And so we'll talk about CAPE next and how that works. But as you can see, like this is like kind of the same as the last slide. Is these are the things that we can get and what are probably interesting to us. Event logs again, love it. Fine, that's perfect. So CAPE. CAPE is developed by a guy called Eric Zimmerman. Please take note of this. Go and look at CAPE. It's really good. What we're able to do is run Velociraptor and use CAPE within Velociraptor to go, well, I want to get a triage image of server A because we know it's just, there's shit everywhere. And so CAPE can just go in there and it can be used as this collection. It goes, well, okay, I want the NT user dat, I want the user class.dat, I want all these registry hives, and sorry if I'm speaking gibberish, the MFT, etc., and just go, sweet, we want that 1 gigabyte collection, grab it. What CAPE's really good for as well is there are tools out there in the forensic space, such as Axiom's like probably a really good example of it, Magnet Axiom. Take note, look it up. But it can process kind of like all of these different artifacts, but CAPE also can do this. So it uses a lot of like little command line utilities, and just does it all together at once. So it goes, oh, well, if you've got event logs, we'll run this, or if you've got registry, we'll run Reg Ripper or whatever. And so then it outputs everything, and you can quickly look, instead of having to do this image, process, analyze, it's like image and process is done in 20 minutes, maybe an hour, massive. And then analyze, which does take a bit longer, but you're not having to rely on that slow, burn. Okay, this is my favorite one, Hayabusa. I strongly recommend if anyone's in DFIR, if you're not using this, go and use it because it is so handy. What we're trying to do essentially is there's a lot of information. There's a lot of stuff to go through. So we want to find out these, low-hanging fruit. And it's the name of the game. Find the low-hanging fruit and you can spider web off of that. What it does is it has Sigma rules, which are very similar to Yara rules, if you're familiar with those. Essentially just a rule set that goes and looks over the Windows event logs and goes, okay, can I match this rule against this entry in the Windows event log? And if it can, it gives you, alerts from top critical down to informational. And if any of you have taken the time to look at that, you can see, well, okay, we've got Mimikatz going, there's some, log-on failures, there's all these kind of little interesting tidbits that I'm already kind of salivating at getting my teeth into. So then from there, I can kind of break it down and be like, let's go look at the top critical and see how that relates to other things that have happened on the computer. So super interesting. Definitely recommend it. It's a very quick way, and it's the first thing that I look at once I've processed a triage image. Straight to Hayabusa, find out where those little bits are, and then start looking at other bits. And it just forms my questions. But okay, all these tools are great fun for us technical folk. But how does that help? Well, we now know what has happened because we've been able to do our triage images, our threat hunting. We can answer the questions everyone's holding out to hear. The CEO at this point has probably nearly had an aneurysm, so we need to let some pressure off on him. And the lawyers are probably very much the same. The insurers are a bit the same. The staff are probably just chilling on holiday at this moment, getting paid, hopefully. And then we can also put defenses in place. So we now understand how everything's happened. So we're able to put those mitigations. We're able to give recommendations how to stop this happening in the future. And, of course, we want to recover and remediate. But most importantly, we want to get the business back to doing what they do best, business, which means stonks. So, some observations. How good am I on time?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, so these are just some ransomware TTPs that I've seen through my cases. So if we're looking at initial access, obviously vulnerabilities are just coming out over and over again. I can't even remember if vulnerabilities just come out. But anyway, so like misconfigurations, so that might be like, oh, well, we left RDP open on the firewall, or there's SSH available, etc. Just no MFA or whatever the case may be. Info stealers are getting really popular right now, so people downloading cracked software is where we typically see it. Essentially, it's like adobe.exe cracked. It's free, it's cool. But that just pulls all your browser passwords and anything else it can kind of sink its teeth into. Which is really good bad because they either sell it on to initial access brokers, so on a dark web forum, and go, hey, this password costs $20, mate, it's going to be a good time, enjoy it. And someone will come in maybe a couple months later and wreak havoc, or it's just the actual threat actor themselves, and that's just part of their TTPs and their threat chain. Network compromise, so we see a lot of network scanners, lol bins, which are living off the LAN binary, so you can essentially think of it as like, command prompt or PowerShell, but it can get a little bit deeper into some more interesting lol bins. There is actually a really good website. If you just type in lol bins, you'll be able to find it on Google. Remote management and monitoring tools are really interesting because a lot of places are using things like TeamViewer or AnyDesk or Splashtop or ConnectWise, etc., as legitimate sysadmin tools, and they are legitimate most of the time. But if a threat actor can see that you're using those, well, they're just going to be like, cool, I'm going to use that as well, because no one's going to suspect anything. File servers, obviously, look, we've got file servers. We need them for our staff to do their jobs and whatnot, but they do leave us vulnerable because once a threat actor finds a file server, that's where the money is, right? They want to make that impact. They want to encrypt those files and they want to take them away. And that's typically where you'll see large outbound data traffic is, big spikes on your firewall. Sometimes your ISP can pick it up and you can get the logs through them. But it's usually, terabyte of information went out at 2 a.m. Impact, targeting the virtualization layer, I think is quite interesting, is that threat actors are now, understand that a lot of systems are virtualized just because of cost efficiencies, etc. So they are now trying to target getting into ESXi and Hyper-V, which is the VMware and Microsoft virtualization management planes, where they can either just encrypt the virtual machines at the kind of what you would call the virtual machine disk level, not talk to me afterwards, or they'll just lock you out. And if you can't get into the management plane, well, how do you manage things? It might still be running at this point, but they've probably done other things. You're up another creek with definitely no paddles and maybe no hands. Defense tampering, we're seeing either, it's like bring your own vulnerable driver to stop people, to degrade EDR, or they're literally just turning off Microsoft Defender. And we're also seeing a lot of remote execution abuse, which kind of comes into the lol bin side a little bit as well. So remote PowerShell, PS exec is massive. Or if they get to the domain controller, they're pushing stuff out through GPO. Anyway, I'm really trying to run here. Sorry, give me 2 secs. So key takeaways. Be prepared. Incident response plans, playbooks, exercising. These should be looked at least on a yearly basis. If you're more of a weapon, maybe it's 6 months, but obviously things come into play. DFI our service provider on speed dial. Call me. I work at CyberCX. Unbiased plug, but get someone that can do the dirty work, do the investigation. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Forensics takes time. The questions will be answered. Just set some expectations and then explore. What I've talked to you today, come and talk to me afterwards if you want, because I don't think we're going to have time for questions. Go take notes. Hopefully you've taken notes about today's talk and you can go dig into Velociraptor, Cape and Hayabusa. I just want to say thank you, B-Size Leads. This is my first talk, and Christ. You can find me at these locations. I didn't put my email up there because I didn't want anyone trying to brute force my shit.